All right. Thank you all for being here today. We're so excited to have you each here and excited about Mike and Michelle being here today as well. And when you get a chance, grab some snacks. They're in the back of the room there. Before we get started, I wanted to offer prayer and then we'll jump right in. Will you bow your heads with me? Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you so much for today. Thank you for each heart that's sitting here and willing and ready. And I pray, Lord, that you just continue to bless our campus, bless our students, our community, our families. We're so grateful to you for the knowledge that you have in us, that you give us. And with Mike and Michelle today, I pray that you bless their words and their message today and those of us that are receiving it, and just help us to continue to grow and adventure in this business that we have at Union Adventist University, and just for us to remember overall that it's your school. In your name, amen. All right, so just a couple of things. If you have not received our featured book, Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Gadara, we have extra copies, so stop by after the session today, or there'll be a QR code on the screen that you can register for one, and I'll drop one off at your office. All right, well, without further ado, we'll go ahead and let Mike and Michelle take over. Can you guys all welcome them?
Thank you. This is an honor to be here today. And we just want to share just a tiny slice of a project that Michelle and I have been working on for over 30 years. In the early days when we got married, we've been married for 36 years, and best 36 years of her life.
And I hope yours too.
And mine too. Absolutely. But we were just interested in the idea of what is it that makes people loyal customers and return customers. What is it that makes, for example, why do you have a favorite restaurant? What makes you go there over and over again? Because it's probably not the food. It's probably not the food. You might like the food, but it's not just the food. And it might be a combination of service, the food, the atmosphere, everything about it is creating this effect that we call the chummy effect. And what started out, though, is we had a public relations side business where we were doing surveys and we were doing focus groups for people. And we thought, what if we just did some focus groups on our own interests? And we were really interested in what is it that makes people loyal customers? What is it that makes people love a church? What is it that makes people love a school? What is it that makes people love individuals? And so we started asking people, and really, we thought we were going to get something really profound. So with the questions we asked, but instead people kept saying, I don't know why I like it. It's nice. You know, why do you go to that church? I don't know. It's nice. Why do you like that restaurant? It's nice. And nice sounds like a bad date. You know, like, how was the date? Oh, it was nice. What was wrong? And so we thought nice means nothing. It's telling us nothing. We need to change our whole research project. And instead, let's see if we can figure out what people mean when they say it's nice. Because if we could figure out what that is, then maybe we could teach it. Maybe we could employ it, maybe use it. And it turns out that it really was nothing new. It was just this biblical concept that you find in John 13 that says, love one another in the same way I loved you, you love one another. This is how everyone will recognize that you are my disciples when they see the love you have for each other. We call that the chummy effect. So what is it? Is it some sort of a force or, well, kind of. And is it magical? Because some people have asked us, was this a magical thing? No. It literally is nothing more than an intangible sense of attraction that we feel toward individuals and churches, organizations, companies, universities, and products. And when the effect is in play, we experience product loyalty, brand loyalty. We become return customers. We become fans. We become church members. We become friends. And so we, we ended up realizing that there were these consistent 7 principles that that people kept telling us when they talked about nice. And so we put this, and the order is not as relevant except for the first and the last one. And we're not going to spend the time on the whole chummy effect. We're actually going to spend our time largely with number 2, which is everyone matters. But just as a quick summary of what this project is, and we made this so you can take it with you, and but it's essentially, it's first of all, it begins with gratitude. Without gratitude, none of this works. So this has to be first. Gratitude is the foundation, and if that's not in place, then nothing of this effect will take place. And by that, we mean, like, when you go to a restaurant, do you actually feel like they're grateful you came? If you go to, I've changed doctors because I felt like when I go there, I feel like I'm a bother. They're a great doctor, but I don't ever feel like they're grateful I'm there. So I went to another doctor, and she seems so grateful that I came. She may not be. She may be like, oh, no, it's Mesnard again. But it doesn't matter. I feel like she's so grateful. When you go to see an artist, a band you like, do you feel like, I'm so grateful you're here? Not, I'm so glad you're here. I'm grateful you're here. When you go to a church, do you feel that? Like, I am so grateful you are here. And that's a big part of the effect. Then the one we're going to talk about today is that everyone matters. One of the things we discovered is that the thing that drives people crazy is when they perceive an organization or an individual as treating some people differently than others. That irks people. I don't know if it irks you, it irks me. When I see, for example, that the wealthier people, the donors, the good-looking people, I'm trying to describe all the people that aren't me, are treated differently than us just common folk, That really gets under our skin. We'll talk about that. The other thing is everything matters. Details aren't just important because we love details. They're interpreted as a kind of niceness. When you go to someone's house and they have invited you into their home, but they've really taken some time to put out a nice spread. Like, I don't know if you've ever gone to Shelley Johnson's house and you just see this beautiful spread. You don't just think like, wow, she worked hard. You think, no, that's so nice of her. And you feel that effect. And then the fourth one is what we call presence is powerful. It turns out that one of the things that people really interpret as niceness is just showing up. Just showing up. This is an idea we learned. I don't know how many of you remember John Wagner, who was 2-time president here. And he talked about the ministry of presence. He talked about how, we'll have the recitals over at the recital hall. And usually, it's someone's clarinet recital. There'll be like 20 people, mostly family. He went to every one. And so when people would say, hey, how was your recital? Did anyone come? They didn't say, I only had 20. They said, the president came. And that's a big deal. And it's interpreted as a kind of niceness. And it's not just that, hey, the president of the college came. Union College or Union University came. The third one is share successes, own failures. If you want people to give you credit for your success, you have to always so be willing to own your failures. Also, what you say matters less than who you are. In other words, authenticity matters. And if the effect is in play, then people will begin to impose motives on you already. For example, we do this with politics. If you have a politician you like and they say something dumb, because they're human, because we also say something dumb, we just don't have people with a microphone around us all the time. But if we like them, we've already begun making excuses for them, like, oh, that's not what they meant. Let me tell you what they meant. Or they were tired. And if you don't like them and they say something dumb, you're like, see, jerk. We fall into this because we've begun to impose motives on them. And the last one, and again, this is just a quick summary of the whole effect, is if the effect is in play, you have to give them an opportunity to take you home with them. Not literally, because that would be creepy. But we got this idea actually originally from probably the band that had the best chummy effect, believe it or not, is the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead, not a single hit song, well, maybe a sort of a hit song, but the most successful touring band of all time, and the fans experienced this chummy effect. Believe it or not, they're the first band to ever think of the idea of, you know what, we should sell T-shirts. Nobody had thought of this before. There was in the late 60s, and they got booked for 3 shows at Carnegie Hall. And they thought that was funny, that this dirty hippie band from San Francisco is playing Carnegie Hall. So one of the members said, you know what we should do? We should make T-shirts for this. So he made 100 T-shirts for the 3 nights, thought that should get them through the 3 nights. They sold all 100 the first night. So he made 500 for the next 2 nights. They sold all 500 the next night. So he made 1,000 for the last night, thinking they'll just take the rest and sell them on their European tour that they were about to go on. They sold almost all 1,000 of them. And next thing you know, they realized that part of the effect is that people want to take you home with you. When you go to, say, a Disney park, or you go somewhere where you have this great experience, what's the thing you want to do when you're done? You want to buy a souvenir. You want to buy a shirt. You want to buy a hat. You want a little plush, because you want something that reminds you of the effect. And we have to give them an opportunity. And when we don't give them an opportunity to take them home, to take us home with them, they actually interpret that as a kind of hit on niceness, if you will. But we're going to focus largely on number 2. But Michelle, I've been talking so much. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm the big mouth of the family. Michelle's the wise one, and she's going to talk a little bit about that first layer, which is gratitude.
So I am so glad that Yami spent our first workshop in this series talking about gratitude, because like Mike said, it's the foundation. It's where we need to begin. And gratitude is powerful. It's a game changer. When we start to live in a way that expresses gratitude and have the others around us experience it, it changes everything. So first of all, just a real quick recap. When we experience it personally, it rewires our brains. So life is always throwing negative things at us, right? We read the headlines and, oh, they're terrible. We get notifications on our phones all the time, and there's things going on in the world that just can bring you down. And if you fixate on those things, it will bring you down. And the opposite of that is focusing on gratitude, on our thankfulness, and it changes our brains when we do that. So personally, it just changes our actual thought processes.
And it's not just a metaphoric change, it physiologically changes your brain.
Absolutely. And physically, if we are giving gratitude, you know what? We sleep better. Studies show that we actually sleep better when we show gratitude. We have stronger immune systems, and we have fewer aches and pains. Or at least we perceive that we have fewer aches and pains. In our relationships, gratitude is our social glue. When we tell someone thank you, it creates a bond. It changes the perception of the moment when we say thank you and we have gratitude. Professionally, it's our secret weapon. Leaders who practice gratitude have impact all the way through their whole team. Once they start having gratitude and expressing gratitude, it can have a huge impact on everyone that they interact with. So gratitude, ultimately, it grounds us. And it helps us to make sense of our past, bring peace for today, and create a vision for tomorrow. So it's a foundation that we must grow from. And so when we're talking about everyone matters today, it's growing from that foundation of gratitude.
One of the things, I don't know how many of you know this, but I am a recovering alcoholic. So this coming January will be 11 years sober. And, oh, well, thank you. And the first day I went to AA, I love AA. I walked in, I sat down, I'm nervous as can be. And some of the old timers in AA, you don't get to be an old timer until you're sober for 30 years. Some of the old timers would say, I'm so grateful that God allowed me to be an alcoholic. And I thought, that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard, because I am not grateful one bit. But then I began to realize what they meant, because suddenly now their gratitude, it's the gratitude that helped make peace with that past, but also then make sense of the present and give them a purpose for what I'm going to do from here on out. And there's a reason why, even another thing that gratitude does. Did you know that students, before taking a test, if you ask your students, say real quick, before you start taking the test, think of 3 things you're grateful for. On average, their grades will be up almost a letter grade. Nobody can fully explain this. But now, I guess if they're getting an A already, I don't know you can get any higher than that. But try it sometime. When they're giving them a test, say, hey, I want you to try this. Think of 3 things you're really grateful for. And suddenly your brain starts functioning better. Try that next time you're going into a meeting. But today we want to talk about everyone matters. It's our principle number 2. And people really get irked about 2 things. One is, it's amazing how forgiving we will be. We can do a lot of unkind things, and given enough time and contrition, we will forgive them. But there's one area where we have a hard time forgiving people, it's going back to the gratitude, is when we perceive that someone has been ungrateful. 30 years later, you're like, I don't know why I don't like them. And it was probably because for some reason you perceive them as ungrateful. We can't get past it. It's amazing how that affects. And similarly, when we see people treat people differently than other people, it really bothers us, and we have a hard time getting past this. We feel better about people who treat people universally bad than we do people who treat some people well and some people not well. But in short, this principle is that there are no unimportant people.
Absolutely. I love this picture. It represents this guy owns some buildings in New York, right?
He's one of the wealthiest men in New York. But he looks like he's just the janitor. And that's because he works as the janitor for one of his, I think he owns about 20 high-rises. So, and he does that because then he gives them a chance to meet people and just to show kindness to them. He can find out what people really think of his business, his building. Fortunately, nobody knows he owns the building, or he probably wouldn't survive.
But he's created an atmosphere where people treat him like they would everybody else, because they don't realize that he is somebody that they would typically treat differently, because he's got a lot of money. And I love that. I think that's a good, great example of how we can approach this.
So one of the questions might be, why does this matter? Well, one of our favorites, when we think about people who really were able to achieve this effect, our hero in some ways is Herb Kelleher, which I think Kevin knew him, and his book, Nuts. I loved that book so much. We read this book and we're like, this guy gets the chummy effect. And if you remember Southwest, it had something different about it, and it had the chummy effect. And I love this quote because I think this explains why it matters. And I think it's relevant to us here at Union. He says, I believe in one business principle. When you are nice to everyone, everyone will consider flying with you. If you are mean to one person, you are mean to all. So what does he mean by that? Well, we see it play out every day, actually. So if I make a phone call to Union, maybe I'm trying to reach one of you, and my phone call goes to a student who's not been trained, who is maybe woke up on the wrong side of the bed, maybe they're hungry, maybe they're hangry, and they're just a little rude. We'll just say it. They're just a little rude. I'll tell you what I'm not thinking. I'm not thinking, wow, that student is kind of rude. I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking, you know what? Union College is rude. That's what I'm thinking. And that's what everyone else is thinking. Now, I'm not thinking that because I know too many people at Union to know that, but most people don't. And think about that. We do that with everything. So your interaction with people has the lasting effect over everything, over all of us. Basically, how you treat somebody is how we all treated that person in that person's mind.
Right. So we are individually representatives for our entire organization. When someone interacts with us and has a great experience, it affects the whole organization.
So why, and this is where we want this to be a little bit more of a conversation than just us talking. So here we go. Just take literally like 20 seconds, if you're sitting near somebody, answer this question. Why is this so hard? I mean, we all agree that everyone matters. We mean, well, I don't know if that we do all agree on that, but let's just pretend like we all do. Why is this so hard? Tell the person next to you why you think it's so hard for people, not at Union, of course, but to grasp this concept that everyone matters. Take 20 seconds, ready, go. Look at them. You might, if you need to, you might tell them, like, you know what, you matter. All right. 20 seconds are up. All right, somebody tell me something really cool that somebody else said. Somebody tell me something really cool that somebody else said. Yes. What's that? Self-absorbed. Like I'm so focused on what I'm doing, what I need to get done, the burdens I've got that sometimes then people become kind of like the characters in my own personal video game or characters in my own personal movie. Anyone else? Somebody tell me like what something you heard somebody say. Yeah. What's that? Because the world just stinks and people just like are generally selfish. And I think I think there's some truth to that. Now, there's this thing that has been going around a lot lately, and that is about the idea of empathy and whether it's a good thing. Now, generally, we would say empathy is good, right? And right, would you agree with that? But there is this concern that people have about this concept called toxic empathy. And what do we mean by that? Well, there is such a thing as good empathy, where we're literally taking the concerns and the needs of that person, and we're in a loving way helping them. But there's also a kind of enabling empathy, where we're not being helpful. We're actually enabling sometimes bad behavior. We're enabling things that they're doing that might even be abusive. So when we talk about empathy, we want people to know that we're talking about healthy empathy, not the kind also that will burn you out. Because unhealthy, toxic, enabling empathy will burn you out. And many of us know what that feels like. So
right.
Who is it that matters?
So who matters? Who is it that matters?
So tell your neighbor right now, who matters? I know we've said everyone matters, but be more specific. I'm curious what you say when you say that. Who matters? Just take literally 10 seconds, ready, go. All right, somebody tell me something cool you just heard. Somebody tell me something like, oh, I just heard something kind of cool. Anybody? Anybody say, I matter? Nobody said that? Oh, good, somebody did say that. Good, I was worried that nobody would say that, because I don't know if you know this, but you matter. You matter.
Absolutely.
Anybody say that annoying student matters? The one, that comes to class and you're like, oh, they're here. Or your boss. No, we won't talk about bosses here. Yeah. We love this quote here.
This is a quote from Bob Chapman, who wrote the book Everybody Matters. It is about truly caring for every precious human being whose life we touch. It is about including everybody, not just the fortunate few or the exceptionally talented. One of the reasons I like this quote is it reminds me how every student that comes through our doors, every student that's sitting in our classroom or working in our office, every one of them needs a mentor in their life. And sometimes we tend to focus on either the exceptionally talented or the exceptionally needy. And sometimes the kids in the middle get missed because they don't seem like they need anything and they're not exceptional, and so we miss them. And I think it's important to remind ourselves that everybody, no matter where they fit on that spectrum, even think of that in context of our colleagues, all of us need that. We need to be someone who matters. It's important.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to try a little activity here. We're going to play a little good cop, bad cop. So if you need to be in like a group of 2 or 3. So look at or 4. And so look at the people around you and say like, okay, you'll do.
Make sure that no one is left out.
That's
So
right.
if
Like poor Tim here, he looks left out. He's hoping that somebody will say, even Tim matters. Right?
And
Come join our group.
Lisa in the back, make
Oh,
sure
that's
that
right.
everybody is included.
All right, so here's what we want you to do, okay? So we want you to imagine for a moment that a student has come to, first of all, I want you to right now decide, one of you is a student and one of you is the employee. So real quick, decide who's who. Easy way to tell, the one who's the student is the first person who pointed. Okay. All right. So
Do we need 2 employees?
and if you have 3, so first of all, look at that student, everyone in your group, look at your student. Okay. Your student has just come to your office. You've got an important meeting in 10 minutes, and this person has come demanding that they talk to you. Okay? Somebody in your group, try to respond to them in a way that everyone matters, including this person. How do you respond to that person? Take a moment and just respond to that student. Look at the student. Look at that mean, rude student. And
Okay.
all right. Let me ask the students, how many of you feel like you matter?
How many of our students
All
feel
right,
like they
students,
matter?
let me hear the students. How many of you students feel like you really matter? Good. So you feel like, oh, that felt good, right? Some student here, tell me what was said to you that helped you feel like you mattered.
They were willing to make time even though it's not now.
Okay. So in other words, I'm going to make time. It just can't be now. Good.
Same thing. Willing to make time, give that 10 minutes, but still have your 7 hours.
Right. I love that. All right. Now here's a different scenario. Okay. So anyone else who's in your group, so whoever's the student in your group, designate somebody to be the new student here. And if it's only a group of 2, that's pretty easy.
So new student.
Actually, but now you're not a student. That person's not a student. So you've just nominated somebody who is that colleague who talks too much. So you know what I mean. They just talk, and you're almost afraid to go near their office because then you'll end up getting stuck in a conversation. You know who I'm talking about. So, sorry, we're just talking about me right there. All right. Here's what I want you to do, okay? First of all, I want you to talk to that person in a way that shows that maybe they don't matter. I know that's like, so it feels weird to try it that way. Try it right now. You could be those who are the employees who talks too much. Feel free to talk too much, and the rest in the group, try to shut them down a little here.
want to go?
All right. I'll tell you what bothers me a little bit, and that is everyone seems a little happier now on this one. Like, I feel so good finally getting to tell that colleague of mine to stop talking. Somebody tell me who was the one who talks too much, how you felt. Yeah. You felt summarily dismissed.
Dismissed.
Yes. Anyone else feel that way or something sort of like it?
Oh, she was mean.
Right, and now you'll never get that out of your mind. You're like 30 years later, you're like, I don't know why, but I still don't like her because she was mean in that exercise. So, no, we don't like that. What could we do differently? And think about that. I don't know that there's a right answer because there is sometimes, I think, a little bit of trusting of the spirit to say, how do I respond to this person? But there are ways to nicely say, hey, I've got things I've got to get done, and I would love to talk about this. Or anybody think of like, what would you do real quick that would like help like diffuse that a little bit in a nice way, like they matter? Yeah. Oh, put the phone. Hey, I like that. So, I like that. So, one of the for some of us it's easier because for some of us it's really hard because I don't want to hurt their feelings, and so I end up enabling the activity rather than sometimes just doing what it really is. I've got important things to do. So, everyone mattering does not necessarily mean enabling everybody. If that makes sense, what I'm saying. So, in what ways do we make others feel like they don't matter? Anyone? What would you say to that? Anyone feel? Right.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, if someone's trying to talk to us and I'm like this, and it's not just our students who do that. We do that. Mm-hmm. There's something to when we talk not only on everyone matters, but the idea of presence is powerful. Presence doesn't just mean I'm there. Presence means I'm there.
Right. It's being attentive. It's
Right.
it's putting the phone down and focusing. That's when we're present. And that's, I think, an important part of making a person feel like they matter. They matter enough for us to put the phone down, for us to pay attention.
And I see there are people here that do that so well. I don't know if you've ever walked into Tim Simon's office. Suddenly it's like, I don't know what he's working on, but all of a sudden, like, I matter because he's doing that. I feel this way also when I walk into Susan Byer's office. She might be working busily. She's probably got class in 5 minutes. All of a sudden, I matter. And that means something. That means a lot. Suddenly I'm like, I'm ready to run through a wall for them. Don't ask me to do that, though, please, because that would hurt. And also, what do we do that makes others feel like they matter?
They don't matter.
Or we just did what they don't matter. What do we do that makes people feel like they do matter? Think of somebody maybe right now, maybe someone in this room, like, I'll give you a good example of somebody here that does this. And you can't use Tim and Susan because I just stole them. Yeah.
I think using someone's name.
Yes.
Yes.
Say hi, whoever.
That's right.
Yeah.
When it comes to the research on what makes people go to a church, we like to think, well, it's got to be something theological. That theology and doctrine doesn't even make the top 10 for why people go to a church. It doesn't even rank anywhere near as important as clean bathrooms and good parking. But number one is, does somebody know my name?
Yeah.
Does somebody know my name?
And I know one of the nice things about being at a small university is we have small enough class sizes that in most of our classes, we can easily learn our students' names and call them by name. And that means a lot. If you call them by the wrong name, which that's happened to me a couple times, that you see that they're like, whoa, that's not me. You know, that is it hurts. You know, it doesn't work for them. But when we know their names, it has an impact.
Yeah, the question I had before, and sorry, I went ahead of it. What if the person isn't likable? Please do not like immediately start. Oh, you mean like? Don't announce anyone, especially if they're in the room. And if it's the person next to you, you maybe could tell them. But no, I'm kidding. Do not do that. But what if it's hard to like somebody? And we all can think of people like that. What do we do? How do we make sure they matter? So like that's important enough. Yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the ways that we can do this goes back to gratitude. And I know when I have a hard time with somebody, I will stop and try to think of things that I'm grateful for that person. You know, because sometimes that just can help to flip the narrative in your head by saying, you know what? This person is, I love how they smile. I love how they, and just saying that, it's kind of like the students saying what they're thankful for at the beginning of the test. It kind of flips the script in their head. That flips our script when we start to think about what about that person can I be grateful for. Maybe it's a student that's annoying and you can be like, you know what? I'm glad they're here because that's one more on our FTE. You know, I mean, that's something you can be thankful for, but there's something that you can be thankful for, and that can help to flip the script.
That's right. Anytime when in doubt, go back to gratitude. Gratitude, do not pass go directly to gratitude. And it's amazing how that affects things. One of the things that always drives me crazy is when people say all major religions are the same. I hear that, aren't all major religions the same? No. By the way, that is not true at all, not even a little true, but there is overlap. And one area of overlap is that every major religion speaks of the importance of gratitude. There's a Hindu proverb that says, if you could think of 1,000 things you're grateful for every day, you will achieve nirvana. Now, I don't know exactly what nirvana is. I didn't even like their hit song, but you're going to get there if you're grateful for 1,000 things. So anyway, we want to try a quick activity here. And here's the question that we want you to do. And again, with your group, look at your group right now. And I want you to be honest, okay? Feel free. First of all, promise each other that what's said in this room stays in this room. But who are the hardest customers to apply this concept to? Not individuals. I don't mean like don't pick names. But what kinds of people are hard? Take a moment right now. And if you finish that one, how can you switch the narrative? And third, what tools can you use to convey that they matter? So take just a few moments here to answer that question. Who's really hard in your area? So maybe if you work in the financial aid office, you're going to have a different kind of answer than somebody who's a teacher, than somebody who's in the library. So answer the question. Ready, set, go.
Mike.
All right. What kind of person, not names, please no names, but what kind of person is hard to apply this to? Anyone feel like you could answer this, or maybe you heard somebody else answer it, or maybe somebody else's group answered it and you're stealing their answer? Yeah.
Peggy.
Grumpy old alumni. Especially when you work in alumni, right? Right. So Michelle and I, for a long time, we worked in the public relations office at Pacific Union College. And Any PUC alum or people been to PUC? All right, so got it. So Kevin knows what's going to know what I'm talking about. I think we spent 75% of our time trying to appease the grumpy old alumni who were still mad about a building that had been torn down 25 years earlier. They were still mad about it. They're like, I'm not going to support this school because you tore down my school. And well, that's a challenge. How do we respond to them? And so what do you do when you run
Yeah,
into
how do you
some
flip the
grumpy old?
narrative?
I try to empathize and justify their feelings somehow, find a way to justify their feelings.
Right?
I totally get that. And find a common connection in that feeling that they have.
Right? So, and
Yeah.
it was a struggle at PUC because the building that got torn down, we don't have an equivalent here because this was the building that was the ad building. It was the church. It was the main classroom. It's also where they had all the social activities. And when they tore it down with the plan to build this awesome replacement, but people were so mad when they tore the building down that nobody gave to it. And so there's still just a big plot of grass right there. But I think, but we had to realize that we kind of understand, like, they did feel like their school got torn down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just don't think we have that equivalent right here where one building is the center of our whole college and university life. What's that? Well, we do
Yeah,
have that.
yeah.
I, that
Name
so
change
you
does
probably get grumpy alumni like, well, that's not I didn't go to Union Adventist University. So,
What are some other tough customers, tough ones to deal with? Parents.
parents, yes.
Ooh.
And what do you do
And what
with
do you do?
those
How do you flip
grumpy
that?
parents? So
Okay.
if gratitude doesn't work, send them to Ryan.
So have a boss that's willing to back you up and help. What else? How else can we flip that scenario?
Sometimes I think they just want to be listened to.
Thank you. I think that is a really important tool. Is
Right.
listening well. Like letting them,
Not necessarily fix why they're upset, but they can be heard.
yeah. And when we're listening, if we can affirm we've heard what you said, we can say, yes, it helps them. They know that they've been heard. Kate?
Can you walk through someone who is entitled?
Oh, entitled. So, Merrick, we might need to look on the peanut gallery for help on that. So what about that student, that parent, that colleague who's entitled? How do you respond to that person? How do we make sure they matter? Because they do. So
They
we
matter for
bottle
themselves and not for
how much they
everyone
matter,
else.
and then
Oh
we
my.
just evenly distribute it. Yeah. And I know every one of you you're thinking of somebody that, oh my goodness, I can think of that person right now.
Well, I think there's two scenarios. One is it something that I could fix? A lot of times it's not. And then there's the path where I'm listening to you, but I can't really make change happen, but I will ensure that I carry that message over to the appropriate.
Right. And one of the biggest challenges is we get this kind of compassion fatigue. I don't know if any of you feel that, where you've been doing this for a long time. You've been dealing with grumpy alumni, worried, scared out of their minds parents, and entitled individuals. And there's a point where you're just like, I'm so sick of this. And it's hard to generate that. And this is where I think we as institutions can do things to help feed us, because that's a real thing, that sort of compassion fatigue, where not that you don't care anymore, you just can't seem to muster it up. And again, it goes back, the only thing I can think of that can help with that is gratitude. And I know that sounds like such a cliche, but it does help a little bit.
But
You
I
know,
think this also speaks to the importance of not only everyone mattering who we're serving, everyone in this room, we're serving people. But you know what? As an organization, we're serving each other, and we have opportunities to make each other matter. I think it's really challenging to make everyone matter when we don't feel like we matter. I think that's one of our a really difficult challenge. If we don't feel like we matter, it's really hard. It's work to make other people feel like they matter. So I think part of it is finding ways to make sure that all of our employees, that we're helping each other feel like we matter. Part of that is looking to our leaders from all of our leadership. As we go down through all of our leadership, that's a big part of the job of leaders, is to do that.
this makes me think again, going back to Herb Kelleher
Yes,
of
the best.
of Southwest, because many of you have heard that expression that the customer's always right, or the customer is what's most important, and they are super important because they're paying the bills. But Herb Kelleher began to realize that the most important people I have are my employees. And if they're happy and if they feel like they matter, then they're going to turn it around and they're going to make the passengers feel like they matter. So if you ever have, and I think this is even still true today, even though I feel like Southwest maybe has lost a little bit of their mojo on this, but and Kevin is going to be like, it looks like he's kind of agreeing with me here. So, but if you've ever walked in the terminal in a Southwest section, look at the ads, because the ads might say something like, our employees are rated #1 in North America. Now, who's that actually targeted at? Now, as a passenger, I look at that and say, this is great ad. You have great. I'm going to be flying on something that's got great employees. But that ad was made for the employees.
Yeah,
To say, you guys are the best.
Because when they're walking onto the plane, the pilots and the flight attendants, they see it and they're like, wow.
One of the
number
things that
one.
makes this hard is at a place like a university such as this, we don't often think about it because we're surrounded by people, we're surrounded by students, but at the same time, it's a super lonely job. One of the things that was shocking to both Michelle and I when we went into teaching was how lonely it is. Because you're part of a department, and you might have a department meeting, and you're surrounded by students, but for the most part, you're kind of operating on your own, and you don't feel that camaraderie. And we need to make ways for us to be able to build each other up. We need teams, and this is something that I think I really like that this series is doing, is just trying to find ways that we can tackle some of these. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just have to speak to your 2 points, and I'll only take a minute.
Oh, here we give you the mic even.
The best lesson I learned came from my mentor, Don Clifton. My very first day on June 3rd, 2000, I walked in the Gallup office on 66th Street, and Don greeted me. And he said, Tim, I was a teacher, and you're a teacher. I want to quiz you. I thought, this is interesting. So he said, who are the most important employees at Gallup? And I'm trying to impress the big guy. So I said, the researchers on 2nd floor. Without the research, we're just a consulting company. With them, we're Gallup. And he taught me the best lesson I've ever learned. He said, no. He said, let me tell you who the most important people are. And he pointed to Joyce Caldwell, who greeted people. Because our customers were rating Gallup, not by the 2nd floor researchers, by how they were greeted. Gallup followed people around. After being greeted by Joyce, they went to get coffee. And Gallup was being surveyed and determined by if our coffee was lukewarm or piping hot. And they went into the bathroom next. Now, Gallup didn't follow them into the bathrooms. And they were judging us by the cleanliness of our bathrooms. And Don looked at me and said, the heroes are the folks who greet, and the folks who make the coffee, and the folks who clean the bathrooms. Because if they don't do their job on 1st floor, nothing you and I do in 2nd floor matters.
That's right.
I love Union, and this is my 3rd gig here, but we just do a poor job of creating heroes in every role. What we have to do at Union is make sure that everybody's a hero, whether they're greeting, making coffee, or cleaning bathrooms. That's my 2 cents on that.
Preach it.
It's similar in a church. People, when they visit a new church, decide within 7 seconds whether they're going to come back. So who's the most important person, who's operating in the church? That moment of greeting is so vital. And it's not just, how warm is the handshake, because that's important. But part of it also is, do I sense like details have been taken care of? Even right there when I walk in the lobby. 7 seconds, that doesn't sound like very long, but that's how much time it often, people have decided like, oof, not going here again. And bathrooms, by the way, cleanliness of your bathrooms is the number 2 thing that creates loyalty to an organization. So make sure your bathrooms, that's why our janitorial staff is this is why Lori is so important. Yeah. So that's why if you work at a Disney park, the highest paid people at a Disney park are the janitorial staff, but the highest paid are the landscaping crew. Because they realize the details, people interpret that as a kind of niceness. We need to kind of wrap things up, and so we want to do this with
This is an individual activity, and it's just something that we're going to share with you, and we want you to take it home and think about it. Is there someone you need to reconcile with who maybe you haven't made feel like they matter, that you need to make a reconciliation with? If there is a person like that, there's cards. Grab a card, write them a card, send them an email, schedule coffee with them. They're hard conversations, but the results can be amazing. And so if that's somebody who's on our team here at Union, just think what kind of power that can have to reconcile and to let them know, you know what, you do matter and I'm sorry. So just an invitation.
So they're on the desk, so don't leave without grabbing one. They're also really cool, so make sure that even if you're not sure you're going to do it, like, ooh, these are kind of nice, I could use this. And can I also say on the idea of bringing people home, if you've sat by somebody and you're like, wow, I really got to meet somebody new, you know what? It's a big deal. If you were to write a note to them, say, or even just pop in and say, hey, thanks so much for doing those questions with me. That was neat. I enjoyed getting to know you. That matters to people. So maybe it's somebody you see all the time, and so you can say, thanks for tolerating me another day. No, don't say that. But so I love these verses. Read these verses.
A couple verses for us that I think speak so strongly to what we've been talking about today. 1 Peter 2:17, honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the emperor. That one's kind of hard. There's some parts of it that are kind of hard. God calls us to some hard things, right? And then the second one from Philippians 2:4, let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others.
And one thing that I think we need to mention, and I feel like we're afraid to say it because there's something in Christianity that, or how we do Christianity that makes us forget this because we feel like it sounds arrogant. And that is that you matter. You matter. Scripture is so clear on this. You matter so much that before the beginning of time, God saw you, God picked you, God had a plan for you. And that's no small thing. That is a beautiful thing. And you matter. So even as you're just walking from your car to your office, remind yourself, I matter. And what a blessing that I get to be here, and I get to be a blessing here. And make sure you also get a copy of the book.
So if you want a copy of the book, you can either talk to Kate today or you can scan the QR code and she will make sure that you get a copy of it. So I wanted to make sure this is the book that's kind of been guiding this series of workshops, Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guadara. And also I want to invite you to our next session. On February 3, Kevin Michaelenko is going to be doing our next session. called The Warm Handoff. And put that in your calendar, be here. And then our final session in this series will be with Drew Meckelberg on April 14, Going the Extra Mile. So make sure and add those to your calendar. All right.
Thank you so much, everybody.